the exercise today so that the final report can be tabled in Parliament. So that is really the objective of today. So the way I intend to proceed is really page by page. If there are no issues with a page, we just move on to the next, and we proceed that way. And as you have a correction or an issue you want to raise on a particular page, just indicate to me, and then we will hone in on that specific one. So I would start with page 1, and unless I hear someone intervene, I will just keep going. So page 1 is fine. Page 2. Page 3. On page 4, at the second paragraph, where it reads arrears in appropriation accounts, there is a recommendation that the committee would need to make. Our committee clerk started the sentence and left it there for us to complete that in terms of the recommendation. So I'd invite members if you have any thoughts. Let me ask Carencia, can you hear us clearly, Carencia?
Yes, I'm hearing you, Chair.
Okay, all right, good. So any thoughts in terms of, okay, and Carencia, could you mute your mic when you're not speaking? Because we're picking up a little background noise when you're not speaking. Any thoughts on that, item 2, what the recommendation should be?
Well, essentially, Chairman, it is a requirement for all ministries to bring at the end of each year to have that completed. And I think in that light, it would be to make the recommendation that the ministry ensures or takes all steps to ensure that this is completed within a designated period of time, and whatever personnel that may be required for them to ensure that this is done is put in place.
All right, so in terms of wording, then, Member Guy, we'd be saying your committee recommends in order to prevent a recurrence, the ministry should, it would be hire the personnel required to ensure that this is completed within the period under review?
We might have a challenge with hire in terms of the public service establishment. So we should say take all steps to ensure or to task personnel to ensure that it is done.
Okay. Rosie, you have that? Yeah. Any other comments on that particular recommendation, members, on page 4? So the wording would be that the ministry should take all steps necessary to ensure that the arrears in the appropriations accounts are up to date and in keeping with each financial year.
Chair, there's another point to it, because the paragraph also speaks to one of the reasons why they don't have
the lack of training. Right.
And I think we should also include in the recommendation some aspects to training as well.
Member Clerk, you following us? We're on page 4 at item 2, arrears in appropriations account. And we're taking a page by page assessment of the document.
Chair, which would also involve possibly in the wording where the training is concerned to either seek support from the Ministry of Finance or have training done through MIND or something like that. But
all right, so I don't know if we have to be specific, whether it be the institution, but indicate that we are calling for the personnel to be trained so that they can fulfill the function of ensuring that these accounts are brought up to date in a timely fashion. All right, I'm moving from page 4, and from my recollection, I think that was the only area where we needed to add a specific recommendation. All right. Anything on page 5?
Chairman, there's a was there that shouldn't be
Which?
at the end of the second paragraph.
Just page 5, the top of page 5, just tell me.
No, man, the second paragraph, Program of Advancement through Health and Education Path.
Okay.
Currently, the end of the paragraph.
All right, you pick that up, Rosie? Okay. Anything else on page 5, members?
No, Chair.
All right. Move to page 6. Page 7. Page 8. Page 9.
Chair, I am not sure if it falls anywhere under this as it relates to path, but I am certain, even though the ministry said they have been or had been looking at it, that part of the deliberations of the committee was that the ministry should have a reassessment of the eligibility criteria. We were told that the means proxy, the proxy means test was being, they had had some look at it a number of times over the years since 2001. But I am distinctly remembering that the committee asked PATH to go back and have another look again, particularly when it was brought at the committee's attention, well, by members here, that part of it was a requirement to have, not to have a fridge or a stove.
I remember seeing that. I don't know if it would be, if you look, go back at page 8, I wonder if we could add, under the paragraph, the ministry admitted that after more than 18 years of existence, a comprehensive review of PATH was needed to determine if the original intent of the program was being achieved. We were told that such a review has already commenced and that the ministry would have to engage a PIJ to determine what needs to be done to address the issues concerning the selection methodology. Mm-hmm. So I think that was the specific thing we related to the determination to be made about how people. On page 7. The committee clerk is drawing me to page 7 at the paragraph entitled number 2. And I think there was a very detailed discussion around that. If you look at that paragraph, contrary to the information provided by the ministry, members felt that there didn't appear to be a standardized criteria for eligibility for PATH, as we have observed that many persons who were desperately in need could not qualify for the program, while persons who were not in need were found to be eligible and were placed on the program. And then there's quite a bit of detail there.
But Chair, that is just what came to us as observations. I think that there has to be, and I agree with you about page 8, that in terms of the recommendation, it should be particularly pointed that the committee recommended that that be done. So
we could add it at, I would say,
the same part you mentioned earlier on, Chairman.
Yeah, we could add that the committee
at 5
recommended that that specific attention be paid to a review of the eligibility criteria for persons seeking to join the PATH program. Are members okay with that? Yeah? Okay. Anything else on page 8, members? All right, moving on to page 9. Page 10. Page 11. Page 12. Thirteen. 14. 15. 16. 'm just raising something here for consideration. Under the KSAMC and the delineation between what is considered parish council and also versus NWA, and we recommended that the KSAMC move with alacrity to complete the listing of locations of roads under its purview. I would say this is a problem which exists in every single parish council across the country. And would the committee be minded to recommend that what we are recommending for the KSAC be done across the board for all 14 parish councils? Okay, so could we add that, committee clerk? All right, that's page 16. Also on page 17, the issue of community consultations. Your committee recommended that the KSAMC should have public consultations that are documented in a formalized way at least once every 2 years, and they should have formal sit-downs, division by divisions. Again, I would recommend that what applies for the KSAC should apply to all the parish councils, where each division and each councillor would be required to have a consultation in the same way that members of parliament are required by the Constituency Development Fund to have a consultation once every 2 years.
And just to tie it up, Chairman, remember there are no municipal corporations.
Municipal corporations, sorry. Are the members okay with that? Any
yes,
objection?
Chair.
Okay, all right. That's page 17. Page 18. Again, I want to, on page 19, where we made the recommendation, your committee recommended that the permanent secretary should hold discussions with the minister so that the required assistance, including necessary budgetary support, could be provided to the weakest. Okay, well, it would cover all the corporations. I was going to say I wanted to ensure that it wasn't just St. Catherine, but it would cover all the corporations who were having difficulties with bringing their accounts up to date. But I think the recommendation captures that. Anything else on page 19? Page 20. Page 21. Page 22. I want to raise something on page 22. In the discussions, the issue of how to treat with constituents who ask for assistance for universities that may be overseas or for non-governmental institutions, private institutions. I don't think there was a definitive answer here which could provide guidance to members of parliament, because from time to time we all get requests for these types of assistance. And also the issue of persons who may have relatives who work in a constituency office, and whether that raises a conflict necessarily, which I don't think it does in my own view, but that was brought up. So I would want us to, as a recommendation, to ask the CDF to definitively provide guidance as to whether support should be provided for persons who seek support to do courses abroad. What we have seen more recently, particularly since COVID and even before, is that many people remain physically here in Jamaica but take advantage of online offerings and have done degrees in other countries this way. So I think we need some firm guidance as to whether the CDF would support requests like that. And so I would put that as a recommendation that we get some guidance on that.
Chair, is it that whereas we're not seeking as a committee to revise the CDF rules, but I think it should be more definitive than just asking them for guidance, is that it is a recommendation from the committee that CDF allows, whatever word that is going to be used, to enable assistance to be given for students in the constituencies who will do courses abroad, at universities abroad. The other matter that you raised, Chair, I don't necessarily think that it would be a conflict of interest so long as that particular individual is a resident of the constituency.
Yeah, that's my view. I don't think it is at all. Persons work within the offices of members of parliament, and if you make an assessment and the person is in need, I don't see it as an issue. I mean, one of the issues also raised was in one particular case, one MP allotted 12% of 6.5 million to a single beneficiary. I think there can definitely be guidance that there should be a maximum amount for which no beneficiary should get over and above that amount. I think we could definitely say that as a percentage of the overall budget. Comments, members? Any comments on that?
Chair, I like the fact that you have used the word assessment, because indeed this is what we need, far more than just guidance from the CDF, but a consultative approach. So if we decide that we are going to enable constituents who wish to study overseas, there must be clear reasons as to why we would be doing so, and equally clear reasons as to why such would not be considered. So I do believe that when these decisions are made, it must be in consultation with members of parliament and also stakeholders. And maybe we can even push the boundary further to ascertain why, if we're saying no to a Jamaican student who wishes to study overseas, what are the mitigating reasons why you would say absolutely no, no way? We need to be very clear on that.
I'll just give you an example of a young lady who I met, there was an echo, 2 days ago, and she's actually going to an Eastern European country to pursue medicine. And, you know, I asked her why, and she said the fees there are the equivalent of $5,000 for the year. And she simply couldn't afford to pursue medicine in Jamaica. And that was her only way of pursuing medicine. Now, would we deny somebody like that access to support versus someone who is physically here in Jamaica pursuing medicine at one of the local universities? So, you know, it's something that we have to consider carefully, and we would need guidance on, because more and more Jamaicans are seeking opportunities outside of the country. As I said, many pursuing online courses as a way of upgrading their own skills. Yes, Member Clark.
And certainly studying outside of one's country doesn't mean that one does not intend to work in his or her own country, or to even contribute to the development of his or her own country. No more than it necessarily means that attending a university in your own country doesn't necessarily guarantee that that student is going to remain in Jamaica. So we have to look at it very broadly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning again, and sorry to be late. I too am in agreement with the fact that we need to get specific or a definitive answer from CDF as to the amount that any one recipient can get from our CDF as it relates to the educational grant. Because truth be told, you would really want to meet as much as possible, but at the same time, you also have to look at the fact of the expense of that single person that seeks the assistance and how well they need, because many a times, Mr. Chairman, the recipient or the individual really do need that great insurgent of funding or support. So for them to give us clarity as to the ceiling, it would set us, all 63 of us, in a better stead as to how we go forward.
Thank you, Member Clark. I agree with that. That's page 22. Move on to page 23. Page 24. On this issue, I want to just draw the attention to issues related to fixed-term contracts. And we have had a number in the public sector where agencies of government who don't strictly fall under the normal public sector guidelines have put in place types of contracts which have cost the state significantly, and which, when the issues arise, they have sought legal advice privately. The contracts are, in essence, above board legally, but what the state ends up having to pay out when persons are either voluntarily or involuntarily terminated tends to be larger than what would have been projected. So I'm just thinking off the top of my head about whether we should be making a recommendation in relation to the Attorney General's Department reviewing contracts of employees in these entities to ensure that there is some consistency and that you don't have a situation like the one we had with the FLA, where the FLA is insisting that it acted correctly, but the Auditor General indicated that it acted against government guidelines. I don't know if members have any thought on that particular one, because it's not just an issue related to that entity. All other entities that are what you might call public sector corporations, not on the central budget, may have similar type situations that might arise. So my recommendation would be for a review or standardization of those employment contracts, and that the Attorney General's Department have final sign-off on those things. Any thoughts, members?
Could you just refresh my memory in terms of where?
I'm on page 24. This issue really was related to fixed-term contracts that the FLA had engaged personnel in. They had sought legal advice outside of the Attorney General's Department. When the issue came up for determination and persons were paid sums which the Auditor General felt were significantly higher than they should have. And I'm saying I think it may be an issue not just related to the FLA, but other agencies. And as such, we may have down the road liabilities and contingencies which we don't know about at this point. And I think the only way to try and bring some uniformity would be for the AG's department to have some purview of standardization of these types of contracts, so there's consistency across the public sector.
Basically saying it should obtain for all agencies such
Yeah.
as, yes,
Yeah.
I agree with that.
That's what I'm saying, yeah. Page 25, this is the Accountant General's Department. Page 26. Page 27. Page 28. Page 29. I would add on the page 29 on contracts awarded to board members. The recommendation, as your committee recommends, that the Ministry of Education and Youth should immediately implement a system of disclosure requiring all board members to supply information about all businesses or companies to which they were connected or associated with, blah, blah, blah. They should extend, it may already do, but it should extend to every single ministry or agency, that a registry of declarations be there for all board members to indicate in the very much the same way as members of parliament. We are required by law to declare any interest that we have in an entity that may be doing business with the government. A similar thing should exist for all board members of any public entity. Members, any thoughts on that?
Supported.
Okay. Anything else on page 29? Page 30. Everybody has looked at the register to ensure there's a correction. So I'm being told for Mr. Donovan Williams, 10 present, 3 absent. And if there are any corrections to... Huh? Just use your mic.
I'm sure I've sent 2 apologies. I don't normally get missing without sending an apology.
All right. We'll check with the committee clerk to, if the apology was received, then we'll ensure it's updated. All right, members, that would conclude the review of the draft report. Are there any comments generally? Yes, Member Charles.
Chairman, with regards to the recommendation for CDF, I don't know if we can add that or not, but I was told that they do follow the guidelines submitted to them by the Ministry of Finance when I received the manual. So I'm not quite sure if they can make those changes. It might be the Ministry of Finance that they have to go to make those changes with regards to the education and all those questions that we're asking, the limitation of what we can give.
Well, I think they can recommend. I don't know if I think the Ministry of Finance would have to sign off finally, but I do believe the CDF would make the recommendations in a policy document that ultimately...
And since you are more seasoned than me, I'm not quite sure if I could add that now, but for example, while we're asking them to review, I would love for them to also review this terminology, recording expenditure.
Called what?
Recording expenditure. Recording expenditure.
Recording.
It said recording when, I'm not sure if it's recording, but.
Recording right. Or recurring?
Well, it was typed, maybe it was typed wrong. Sounds like recurring, but
okay.
I'm not quite sure which one it is. But for example, with my situation in my constituency and with the roads as fabulous as we have our roads, I have entrepreneurs there called taximen. And I am not able to assist any of them with regards to helping them with a tire or any of those things because of, is it a recurring expenditure? And I'm wondering if that's something that we could also recommend for review.
I think, there is, I believe, some flexibility in terms of providing support to an entrepreneur, for example. Economic enablement, and I mean, some entrepreneurs may be a hairdresser, barber, some may be a taximan, but you were told no specifically that you couldn't do it? Okay.
Chair,
yeah.
I think part of the problem is how the project proposal is written as well.
Right.
You know, because no, that has to do with how the project proposal is written. Because, for example, I've had cases where I've been able to provide a tire or so, but I'm asked to submit the PPV plate and the insurance and so of the taxi, right, so that they can get that assistance on the economic enablement. But it's how the project proposal is written. No, I didn't put specifically taximen, but I suspect you have so many taximen, that's why they bump your thing.
All right, but I think that's a discussion we can have with the CDF office about how we treat with that. But I know under economic enablement, entrepreneurs, and they would be a class of an entrepreneur, can receive some form of assistance.
I was
Recurring, okay.
asking earlier on, whereas I don't have that CDF guideline in front of me submitted to them by the Ministry of Finance, does it specifically state about the educational grant and those studying abroad and that sort of thing?
No, I don't think it does.
No, that's the point I'm making.
Right.
So we could make that recommendation to them, CDF, because
Right.
it would not fall afoul
Right.
necessarily of what the Ministry of Finance
Has recommended. Okay. All right, members, if we... All right, members, the committee clerk, based on our review here, will finalize the report. It will be circulated electronically, and next Tuesday before the sitting, we'll send a hard copy for members to sign so that it can be tabled in Parliament next week, Tuesday. Members, in terms of the date for our next meeting, we're proposing September 27th. There are two reports that have been tabled since we last met. On the NSWMA is one of them, so we intend to deal with that report on the 27th. So that's the date we're proposing for our next meeting. Any other business, members? If not, could I have a motion for the adjournment? Member Guy, seconded by Member Charles. Let me thank you very much for participating in this meeting, and I will see you on the 27th. Meeting adjourned.